It's 6:11 p.m. in Butler, Pennsylvania. In 26 seconds, every protection the Secret Service has built will be tested. What most people saw was chaos. Gunfire, people diving, a fist in the air. What almost nobody understood was that they were watching a system, one designed decades ago for exactly this moment. And in the middle of this chaos, the Secret Service did something they have never done before, something that is part of an insane protection system. Days before the event is scheduled to start, the Secret Service deploys an advance team to the venue before the protectee arrives. At the Butler Farm Showgrounds, that team showed up on July 8th, 5 full days before the rally, and their job was to take an open-air fairground in rural Pennsylvania and turn it into a site that could withstand a coordinated attack. They walked every inch of the property, cataloging every rooftop, window, tree line, and elevated position that could give a threat an angle on the stage. A former Navy SEAL sniper instructor later rated the site a 9 out of 10 in difficulty for counter-sniper operations. A 10 would basically be holding a rally in an active war zone. The advance team saw all of it. What they did next would determine whether anyone survived July 13th. From that survey, the team builds concentric rings of security around the spot where the president will stand. The innermost ring is pure Secret Service. Magnetometers at every entry point, agents controlling every approach. Nobody getting close without being physically screened. The outer ring belongs to state and local law enforcement running early warning, scanning the perimeter, and feeding intelligence back to the Secret Service in real time. If a particular building has a direct line of sight to where the president will be standing, someone from the Secret Service or local law enforcement goes on that roof or inside that building before the event starts. Each ring has a different mission, and the whole design is built so that a threat has to punch through all of them in sequence. Breach the outer ring and you still have to get past the inner. Get past the inner, and you're face to face with people whose entire careers have been spent preparing for exactly that moment. Those rings feed into a security room at the venue that functions as a real-time tactical operations center. Camera feeds, radio nets, and intelligence from the FBI, DHS, and every agency on site flowing through one room. When a suspicious individual gets flagged at the outer perimeter, this is where the decision gets made to dispatch agents, pull camera footage, and track that person's movement through the crowd. At Butler, the security room was processing reports from over 100 law enforcement officers spread across the site. And buried in all of that advanced planning is a detail that sounds minor until it's not. During the advance, an agent drives the route from the venue to the nearest trauma center and times it, turn by turn. They coordinate with the hospital so the emergency room knows the motorcade could be coming. It's the kind of preparation that feels paranoid until the afternoon it becomes the only thing that matters. At Butler, that drive happened on a quiet weekday 5 days before the rally. All of that, the rings, the security room, the medevac route, is what the Secret Service builds before anyone shows up. But a building does not pull a trigger. At Butler, what stood between the stage and a rifle was a handful of people carrying equipment most Americans have never heard of, trained for a moment they hope never comes. The first layer of defense is the Secret Service counter-sniper teams, codenamed Hercules, operate in 2-man positions on the highest points overlooking the venue. One spotter behind high-powered optics, one operator behind the rifle. The spotter is not just a second pair of eyes. He is reading wind speed, calculating range, monitoring environmental shifts, temperature, humidity, mirage off the pavement, and feeding that data to the operator in real time. At distances past 300 yards with a bolt-action rifle, a shot does not happen on instinct alone. Someone has to call the conditions, and at Butler, that meant processing variables across 700 acres of open Pennsylvania terrain in the July heat. To make a shot at those distances, under those conditions, with no warm-up, the weapon cannot be an afterthought. The Secret Service uses a custom-built Accuracy International Mk13 Mod 7. Agents call it a JAR, just another rifle, which is a bit like calling an aircraft carrier just another boat. But the obsession is not the platform, it's the fit. The Secret Service armorer measures each operator's arm length, wrist circumference, trigger finger length, then builds the weapon to match the shooter's body the way a tailored suit matches its owner. The scope alone, a Schmidt & Bender 525x56 PM2, costs roughly $4,500. The full setup runs north of $13,000. And even then, the service does not trust the equipment. Counter sniper operators must qualify at distances out to 1,000 yards every single month. Miss the qualification and you don't work the next event. That standard gets maintained across an entire career, building toward a trigger pull that might never come, or might come once with no warm-up, on a Saturday evening in a Pennsylvania farm town while the whole world is watching. Meanwhile, the next layer gets into position right next to the president. The agents of the protective detail do not operate from rooftops or behind rifle scopes. They operate at arm's length. Their job is to physically place their own bodies between the president and incoming fire, and they train for it with a drill called attack on principle, a full-speed rehearsal of rushing the protectee, covering him, compressing around him, and moving him to the armored vehicle. The detail practices this at the James J. Rowley Training Center in Beltsville, Maryland. And the Secret Service runs it so many times that the response stops being a decision and becomes something closer to a reflex. At Butler, the detail was led by an agent named Sean Curran, and that reflex would matter more than anyone in the crowd could have known. Behind the detail, there's a layer the public almost never sees. The Counter Assault Team, or CAT for short, stages out of view but within seconds of the president, carrying SR-16 rifles, the same platform used by DevGru and Delta, and wearing body armor under tactical vests. The protective detail covers and evacuates. CAT moves toward the threat. They exist so that if someone breaches the rings and engages the president, there's a tactical unit already positioned to put overwhelming force on the problem before it can develop into something worse. They position close enough to respond in seconds, but far enough from the crowd that most people at a rally never know they're there. And when they move as a full team with overlapping fields of fire. Scattered through the crowd alongside them are the plainclothes counter-surveillance agents whose sole focus is not the president, but the audience, reading thousands of faces for the one person whose behavior breaks the pattern. The one looking at rooftops instead of the stage. The one whose movement through the crowd doesn't match anyone else's. These agents dress like rally-goers and carry concealed. And if you were standing next to one, you would have no idea. Every layer exists because one layer is never enough. And on July 13th, every layer would be needed. Past all of that, parked at the edge of the venue sits a line of black SUVs. To the crowd, it looks like transportation. It's not. Each vehicle in the convoy has a specific role. Lead car, communications, CAT transport, medical unit. Former presidents and candidates ride in armored Suburbans. The entire formation can shift or accelerate as a coordinated unit. And the moment the protectee is inside and the doors close, he's sitting in what amounts to a rolling vault doing 60 miles an hour. But even with all of these people and gear, it takes just one bad guy to study what's going on to find a weakness. At Butler, someone was already watching. At 0700 hours in the morning, the first agents arrive at the Butler Farm Showgrounds and the Invisible Fortress is coming online. K-9 teams work the venue for explosives while the grounds are still dark and empty. Counter-sniper teams climb to their rooftop positions on the barns behind the stage and begin glassing their sectors, memorizing the baseline of every roofline, tree line, and structure within 1,000 yards so that anything new will register immediately. At Butler, the first time Secret Service counter-snipers were deployed for a Trump campaign event was this rally, a decision driven by intelligence about Iranian threats against the then former president. If that intelligence had come 2 months earlier, or if the threat assessed had been scored differently by a single analyst, those barn rooftops would have been empty on July 13th. No spotter, no operator, no jar. The single most important shot in Secret Service history would have had nobody there to take it. The counter-UAS team activates electronic detection and jamming systems covering the airspace above the rally, scanning for unauthorized drones that could be used for surveillance or, in a worst-case scenario, as a weapon delivery platform. This matters at Butler specifically because the threat flew a smaller consumer drone over the rally site hours before the event, conducting his own aerial reconnaissance of the grounds, the stage layout, and the security positions. It was exactly what the system was built to catch. It didn't. As tens of thousands of attendees pour in through the magnetometers, the security room is processing a constant stream of reports: suspicious individuals, medical emergencies, perimeter flags. 4 different agencies are on site at Butler, each on their own radio frequency, each feeding information into a system that has to process all of it and spit out decisions in real time. Counter-surveillance agents are already in the crowd, invisible, watching behavior the way a radiologist reads a scan. The anomaly is what matters, not the normal tissue. CAT is staged and ready. The protective detail is with Trump. At 6:03 p.m., Trump takes the stage. The protective detail settles into formation around him, and the way they stand is not casual. Each agent has an assigned sector of responsibility, a specific arc they own. They position themselves with hands at belt level in a ready stance, one hand free and another near their weapon, spaced deliberately so they can reach the protectee in under a second, but far enough apart that a single blast or burst of fire cannot take out multiple agents at once. To the crowd, it looks like a few people standing around the stage. To anyone who knows what they're looking at, it's a rehearsed geometry that has been drilled until every agent knows exactly where their body goes relative to the president's without being told. On the barn rooftops, the counter-sniper team shift from scanning to hunting, actively working their optics across hundreds of acres, looking for the single charge in their environment that does not belong. A window that was shut and is now open. A shape on a roofline that was empty an hour ago. They've been on those rooftops for hours, fighting the heat, the fatigue, and the natural tendency to relax because everything looks normal. For 8 minutes, everything does look normal. At 6:11, it stops. Trump is mid-sentence, his head turned slightly toward a chart on the screen beside him. That small movement shifts his position just enough to save his life. The protective detail executes attack on principle in under 3 seconds. Agents rush the stage from multiple directions, collapse onto Trump, and cover him completely with their bodies. Nobody gave an order. There was no radio call. The detail does not operate on verbal commands. There's no time for that in an ambush. They operate on proximity and visual cues. When one agent moves, the others read the movement and mirror it. Each agent knows their compression position relative to the protectee's body the same way a lineman knows his gap assignment on a running play. It's mapped, drilled, and executed without conscious thought. At Butler, the geometry they had rehearsed hundreds of times at Raleigh snapped into place in less time than it takes to finish a sentence. Former agent Paul Eckhoff later described it in 2 words: muscle memory. But they're doing much more than just jumping on the protectee. While the detail is stacked on top of Trump, agents are conducting a rapid hands-on assessment, checking for injuries, determining if the protectee can move under their own power or needs to be carried, communicating by touch and voice within inches of his body. That assessment dictates everything that follows. It determines the evacuation speed, the method of movement, and whether the motorcade runs the medevac route or a standard departure. The crowd sees a pile of suits. Underneath it, the next 30 seconds are being decided. On the barn rooftops, a counter-sniper operator reacts to the first rounds. The threat had positioned himself on a building whose roof angle and nearby trees had partially screened him as he crawled into place. The kind of variable an advanced team can flag but can't always eliminate at an open-air venue rated 9 out of 10 on the difficulty scale. The operator pulls off his scope to get a wider field of view with his naked eye, picks up the threat on the AGR building roofline, and gets back on glass. Behind him, his spotter is already calling conditions, confirming range, reading wind across open ground between the barn and the AGR building. What the operator is about to attempt is called a cold bore shot. The first round fired from a rifle that has not been shot that day. The barrel is at ambient temperature. There's been no fouling round to confirm zero, and the shooter has had no feedback from the weapon. Most trained marksmen fire a warm-up round before trusting their rifle at a distance. This operator's warm-up round is the one that counts. 16 seconds after the first round, he engages from over 400 feet. It was the first time in the entire history of the United States Secret Service that a counter-sniper had ever engaged a live threat in the line of duty. Every monthly qualification at 1,000 yards across a career of preparation came due on one trigger pull, from an operator whose name the American public will likely never know. Meanwhile, the protective detail shifts to the next protocol the moment the threat is down. Get off the X. The term means exactly what it sounds like. Remove the president from the point of contact immediately, because a single threat does not guarantee there's not a second one. The agents begin moving Trump toward the armored SUV in a tight formation, shielding on all sides. And then something happens that no training can account for. Trump stands up, raises his fist. The agents are pulling him toward the vehicle and he's fighting them on it. Because the protectee is a human being with his own instincts, and in this moment, his instinct is to show the crowd he is still on his feet. You can rehearse every scenario 1,000 times at the training facility. You cannot simulate what happens when the person you were sworn to protect plants his feet and decides he's not ready to leave. The agents adapt, form a moving wall around him, and get him to the SUV. The doors close. The armor, the bulletproof glass, and the sealed cabin systems that cost millions of dollars to engineer are now between the protectee and whatever else might be out there. The motorcade executes the medevac route, the one an agent drove and timed on a quiet Tuesday 5 days before the rally. Within minutes, Trump is at Butler Memorial Hospital on a path that was locked in before anyone knew it would be needed. Even as the SUV moves, the Secret Service is already running a separate protocol to determine whether this was an isolated event or the first move of something larger. That answer changes the security posture for every protectee in the country simultaneously. The sitting president, the vice president, every candidate, every former president and their families. Within hours, protection is elevated across the board. This is what stands between someone with bad intentions and the president. Not a vest and a couple of guys in sunglasses. A system built by people who wake up every morning and make a promise most of us will never fully understand. That today, if that moment comes, someone else goes home and they do not. If you want to see how the president survives something much larger, make sure to watch this video. Bye for now.